Hi everybody, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We have a really special broadcast for you this evening. We're going to be joined by a couple of the composers and a couple of the leading cast members from Dear Evan Hansen, the Tony Award-winning production that I think is one, just so incredibly powerful, but two, so poignant for this moment. I'm not going to spill the story for you. I was fortunate enough to be able to take in the show last summer or fall in Boston. And it is one of the most powerful shows I've ever seen. It brings an audience on this extraordinary journey of a young man wrestling with some of the challenges of today and the issues around anxiety, around depression, around isolation, around this feeling of loneliness, but then of love and of loss. And the ride that the audience goes on is extremely emotional, and the performance is extremely powerful. But what I thought was really impactful was in a conversation with the cast afterwards, and a conversation around mental behavioral illness, how, because the show is so impactful, how many of the cast members said after every appearance, somebody reaches out and asks for help and says, in your story, in your performance, I saw me. I saw my loved one, my spouse, my parent, my child, my grandchild. And the way in which the cast has been open and brave and courageous about some of their own stories and their own journeys through this, and the fact that the production has, as a unit and deliberately so, made available efforts to increase access to and services for mental behavioral illness. So thrilled tonight and really honored tonight to be joined by Benj, Pasek, and Justin Paul, the composers of the show, as well as Jordan Fisher and Gabrielle Carrubba, who play Evan Hansen and Zoe Murphy, respectively. I think you're going to really enjoy what they have to say, and I certainly did. So here they are.
I don't need you to sell me on reasons to want you. I don't need you to search for the proof that I should. You don't have to convince me. You don't have to be scared you're not enough. 'Cause what we've got going is good. I don't need more reminders of all that's been broken. I don't need you to fix what I'd rather forget. Clear the slate and start over. Try to quiet the noises in your head. We can't compete with all that. So what if it's us? What if it's us and only us? And what came before won't count anymore or matter. Can we try that? What if it's you? And what if it's me? And what if that's all that we need it to be? And the rest of the world falls away. What do you say? It's not so impossible. Nobody else but the two of us here. 'Cause you're saying it's possible. We can just watch the whole world disappear till you're the only one I still know how to see. It's just you and me. It'll be us. It'll be us and only us. And what came before won't count anymore. We can try that, you and me. That's all that we needed to be. And the rest of the world falls away. And the rest of the world falls away. The world falls away. The world falls away. And it's all
So thrilled, obviously, that you guys are here with us this evening, and thank you. And what I was really excited about, just opening up for conversation for all of you, um, I I was inspired when I saw the show about a year or so ago in Boston, and not just by the message, but a couple of things. One, with the courageousness with which the production actually takes on this issue of stigma with regards to mental labor health, and how big a deal that is for people that still, for whatever reason, will not uh, hesitate before accessing services. We did a little presentation afterwards with the cast after the show, and I actually asked the audience how many people had a loved one or family member that struggled with mental behavioral illnesses, and hardly any hands went up, which is kind of striking because the numbers say about 20% of the American population will suffer with or struggle with mental behavioral illness for the course of their lifetime. So every hand should have gone up, yet hardly any hand did. And what I was struck by in the response was from some of the cast members that say how often they are, after every production, somebody reaches out to them and the production team saying, hey, I just saw it touched me in such a profound way. This impacted me. So as a production that has made this a real deliberate and intentional effort to actually help take down stigma, and as for cast members and the composers that obviously feel this on a daily basis, talk to me a little bit about what our country struggles with mental behavioral illness has meant for you, and what this means now in the midst of social isolation and distancing and the challenges we're confronting. Just walk me through what you think what this means and what needs to be done.
I'll jump in. Yeah, no, thank you so much for seeing the show and your response to it and initiating this conversation. I think we're all really grateful to be a part of it, especially right now when it's a more needed conversation than ever. In terms of Dear Evan Hansen and the show, when we started to write it, we wanted to just write something that felt true to the experiences that we were going through and the experiences that the people in our lives were going through. And we didn't think that it would have the kind of resonance that it ended up having. But very quickly we learned when we were developing the show out of town and then subsequently on Broadway and in tours that this private pain that we thought was ours or our friends was actually something that was really much more universal. And audiences were reacting in ways that, they might not have come into the theater saying, I struggle with anxiety or depression or any of these mental health issues, but that clearly they're laughing at jokes or crying at moments that reflect that they do understand that feeling, or they understand the feeling of having a loved one who has gone through it, and the kind of collective experience and catharsis that people sitting in a theater together experiencing this thing together sort of brought out. It kind of gave permission for people to sort of raise their hand and be like, oh, I thought that this pain that I felt or that my parent felt or that, someone in my life felt was unique to them, but actually the stranger on my left and the stranger on my right feel it too and know it too. And that was really, really inspiring to sort of be a permission giving thing to say, hey, this is something that is much bigger than, your own private experience. Mm-hmm. And so from the perspective of the show, it became really evident to us that we needed to provide resources because we're not mental health professionals, and we wanted to provide sort of avenues to resources so that people could use the show as a way to get to these organizations that are good at dealing with and facilitating these kinds of conversations.
I will just say briefly, I'm not going to give it away, but when you say permission to feel that way, there's a part in that show where there was not a dry eye in that theater. I mean, it gets you, it grabs you, and just at a very personal and human level. Yeah. You guys did an incredible job, but it's gripping, right?
Well, I mean, I think that there's an kind of caveat to all of this. Like, I think that the underlying fact is that we work in a service industry, right? The entertainment industry, especially today in 2020, and access that everybody has, whether it be through the means of live streaming or television, film, music, theater, whatever the case may, writing, whatever the case may be, we work as a service to provide an opportunity for people to escape their reality. right? And I think where a show like this is concerned, and this kind of material, where the source material is concerned, it's, you know, it's loosely based off of personal experiences that all of the book writers here had. This isn't necessarily a moment for people to escape their reality, but more so be in touch with the fact of the matter, right? I'm a man of color, that in where Black culture is concerned, you know, mental health isn't necessarily a conversation that's just kind of freely had. I don't know what windows opened and closed for that to happen over the course of history. I think that that's something that will never fully be answered. But to be a man of color that proudly says, you know, and preaches on the fact that I deal with anxiety and depression, and I have a therapist, and I do speak to him on a regular basis because of the necessary, you know, need to have a mechanic kind of help me work through and sort through our things. So, you know, we go to the gym and we make sure that we're properly nourished and whatnot. I think that it's important to, you know, have a platform to be able to discuss what this is through the means of song and through the means of dialogue. And there are multiple conversations throughout the course of the show that do resonate for people. There are moments in the show that don't have anything to do with Evan necessarily that hit me hard as a fan of the show before I, you know, stepped in and became a part of the family here. But I do think that, you know, the nature of our world that we live in, by kind of creating a space for people to be able to escape reality in a lot of ways, you're kind of forced to be one with this material and you know, experience all that it has to give, because it is, these are all important conversations to have. And
yeah, but it's beautifully done and powerfully done, right? I mean, it grips you. Gabby or Justin, jump in.
Yeah, I mean, and the interesting thing is, I think we never, you know, we didn't set about to write like sort of the mental health musical. You know, that wasn't our goal. That wasn't what we were doing at the beginning. But what Jordan was saying was like, we were running to write a show that was about the here and now, what it's like to be alive right now, what it's like to struggle with, have some sort of mental health struggle, but we're intentionally not that specific in the show because, you know, what you said about that 20%, or what you said about how most of us can raise a hand, that we suffer, that we know people that suffer, that we have family members that suffer. We want people to come to the show and to feel seen and to feel heard in that way. And there's a thing that we can do in a musical that you just can't do in anything else, which is we don't have to talk about mental health. We never really talk about mental health that much in the show. There are allusions to it. There are little things mentioned here and there. But what you get to do is, for 2.5 hours, you get to get inside the heart and the mind of a character, of many characters who are going through a crisis, who are struggling with crises both large and small, grieving about a death, but also just grieving what it feels like to get through a day in high school or on social media. And this gift that we get through a musical is that you get to get inside that character's heart and mind, and you get to like in no other art form is it like acceptable to just turn to the camera and for 3 minutes go, here's how it feels to be anxious. I feel this way and I feel that way. But like through the art of writing a song, through metaphor, through prose, through lyric, and through music, we're able to try to capture what that feeling is. And it is, as Benj was saying, it's a cathartic experience. It's a way for people to come and gather together and feel like they're all identifying with this feeling. And that's the thing that we found with the show that was the surprise, is that, you know, there's been no age limit on the people who come to see the show and go, oh my gosh, I feel like that dad, or I feel like that kid. Like we're getting grandparents who go, oh, that reminds me of my kids, and grandparents who go, that's me now, or that was me and I never really worked through it in high school.
Does it happen at every show?
I mean, you guys have, Gabby, I mean, you guys have that experience because they're talking to people every day, every until, you know, social distancing, they're talking with people at the stage door every day.
I mean, it's a cathartic experience to be a part of the show as someone who has a panic disorder, who deals with panic attacks, and on like a meta level to learn the show and learn the mantras that the show kind of subconsciously preaches. Because, you know, I can only speak for my experience as an actor, because, you know, as Jordan and you guys know, like we get a lot of people writing to us, a lot of people at the stage door who are kind of so eager and so quick to pour their hearts to us, because the beauty of theater is that we are so impressionable. We're just distant enough for them to navigate a way to connect, which is so amazing. And I miss so much. But like, I mean, on my personal level, I can't, the show has helped me spark the conversation, especially because we're so open about it here. Like at Dear Evan Hansen, everybody is a resource. I mean, we all of us can suffer, it's not suffering, but we day to day, we tackle the beast that is anxiety, especially now. But thanks to Dear Evan Hansen, I mean, I didn't know these resources were available. And had I known that if I was like in Zoe's position or Evan's position and knew that these resources were available and that it was not a stigma to talk about it so openly and so transparently, I think I'd be so much more comfortable in who I am now, especially as like a young adult navigating being on Broadway for the first time with my own mental health struggles, you know?
But I gotta say, that's what I think is so amazing of the show, to be so deliberate about this and intentional about it, but also of all of you and so many other members of the cast that, again, when we had a little bit of this conversation in Boston, this wouldn't have happened, this conversation wouldn't have happened even just a couple of years ago, right? The idea that, I mean, candidly, is somebody projecting here, but yes, as we discussed before this started rolling, I literally cannot sing, right? Like it just does not work. So I can't imagine doing what you guys do, but the idea that somebody that is out performing on a Tony Award-winning show that has barnstormed the entire country, that some of the lead stars of that performance would struggle with anxiety or panic attacks. One, you just wouldn't expect it, and two, you would never expect them to talk about it. And what I think we're actually in the midst of, because the permission, if you will, of the show to say, hey, we're going to make this out, because of the courage of the cast to be able to step into it. We're seeing this also happen a bit in professional sports, right? Where, Jordan, you talked about the emphasis on physical wellness. Look, you don't have to be all that physically fit to hit a foul shot. I can attest to that. But the idea that that's a mental game, and if you miss it, it's sinking a putt. If you miss it, the weight of the world comes crashing down on a 20-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And the impact now that is being put on as actors, as professional athletes, and as pillars of our society start saying, hey, it's okay because it happens to me too, is so important. And that's why I'm just so impressed that you guys have been so deliberate about this, because I think it empowers so many others to say, hey, if they can, it's okay that I do too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and not to dilute any points here, because every corner of all of these conversations that we are currently having and will have throughout the rest of this conversation are very important. I think that at the end of the day, the evolution of social culture is very interesting, right? And the relevance in which certain pieces of art can sustain throughout the years of all of us kind of shifting our ideas and our thought processes and whatnot. One of the main things that I love to see, whether it be Twitter or Instagram or TikTok, is how important self-care is and how important talking about self-care is, right? And I think that for me personally, as an artist, as a creative, and as a human, that I've been doing this for 16 years, and the feeling of actually doing it only gets better and better and becomes more rich due to my own personal life experiences and whatnot. The catharsis of the thing, like Gabby was saying, is it's so rich, and that goes for not only myself and everyone on the stage, but everybody that is a part of the production, as well as everybody that is fortunate enough to be in the Music Box Theater or whatever other theater that the National Tour is in, or the West End, or whatever the case may be, can experience in that night. There are some corners that will turn on any unique night, because that's the beauty of theater. It's all different and it's electric, and that palpable nature of theater is what makes doing the thing every night so different and so unique. It's why certain scenes hit harder, certain songs hit harder, and that comes from, again, as a fan of the show before I was even a part of it, seeing it a handful of times, it hit me in different ways because of the relevance of social culture in that moment. It's interesting how, you go see any other musical, you can name it. There's a lyric in a song that maybe was written 10 years ago that is so prevalent today. I think that the nature of this beast here and why it is so beautiful and how incredible it is that we can talk about these things now is people are recognizing the importance of having the actual conversation and seeing what that does for humanity.
I just want to, jump into what Jordan is saying too. And like, ultimately the show is about loneliness. It's about a profoundly lonely and isolated kid. And it's about a kid who his loneliness is maximized by, how social media makes us feel like we're connected, but we're really far apart. And it's an examination of that. And kind of something that's interesting that happened with the show is that so many people who were isolated in their own towns, in their own sort of siloed pods, if you will, were able to connect over the show's message and this idea of finding community through the internet. And in this very unique moment that we're in now, where people are literally social, there's social isolation, and we're in these individual kind of spaces, and we're trying to reach out and have somebody see us and hear us and know that our existence is validated and that we matter. The show, before all of this happened, obviously gave a way for people to find community, in times when they felt profoundly lonely. And, while I would love to be, back in a theater, and while I would love to have, 1,000 people all together feeling the communal experience, I'm also very, very grateful that the show also, looks at both sides of social media, how it can make you, feel incredibly outside of a world that's going by, but we're collectively having an experience of profound loneliness, and, being able to talk about that and share that and connect about our kind of loneliness and desperation to connect with each other is also what the show fundamentally is about. And I'm glad that the messages of the show can still sort of ring true in this era, when we need to kind of know that if we reach out, we're heard, and that our voices matter more than ever.
Can I ask real quick here, how did you decide to, knowing that you didn't decide to write the mental health musical, you've done this in an extremely powerful way. And again, from somebody that's seen it, but looking around and seeing how impacted that audience is at a point, at least one point, and multiple ones through it. I mean, you hit it pretty good. So how did you decide to do something to be so deliberate about kind of that message through it? Either one, Benj or Justin.
Justin, you want to?
I mean, I think that when we first started talking about the show, we wanted to first look at sort of the way that we all, it started out as a conversation about how we all respond to grief, and what we do with that publicly. But the show really became about connection and community. And it became about a lot of characters who we all identify with, because they're each of them in their own way. If you watch the show through this lens, they're all just desperate to connect in their own ways, or they're lacking a certain connection in their lives that's really essential to their survival, or that could be, a missing link for them. And we really went through the door of, if we're writing a show about connection, and what we ultimately want to show is someone finding that true connection, that true authentic connection with their loved ones, with understanding that there is a community there is that one person there. Sometimes it's not, we're not discovering that there's a million people, but there is that one person. We then went through the door of, okay, so that means our story starts with someone who has to feel so outside, who has to feel so on the outside, like the song says, on the outside, always looking in. And so, again, we weren't going to it with the prism of, let's write about this mental health issue, or let's talk about this. We went through it of, okay, someone who might be prone to, what's a character who in this position, if you know the story of the show, if you don't, I won't give it away, but what's someone when they're so desperate to connect that they get into, we embellish, which both, we all do this. Like when we just want to be part of something, that we'll embellish, that we'll say we did something we really didn't, or that we will make up things about ourselves that aren't true. We'll post something on Instagram that's not exactly our lives, because it just makes us feel part of something. It just makes us feel like, okay, well, I do belong in these 5 minutes, or in these 5 days, or whatever it is. I do belong to that group. I'm part of that group. So it always went through the door of loneliness. It always went through the door of, let's take a character who, because of anxiety, or because of maybe depression, or because of just how hard it is to survive every day, to be in school, to watch social media and feel like you're not part of things. Let's go from there with that character, and then what journey can we take him on?
So, Gabby, this might not be a wholly fair question for you, but given that, and given kind of as Justin just framed that discussion, I'm obviously cognizant of the fact that you guys we're in the midst of performing this incredible show. You, I think you said you're in Delaware. Jordan's in California. I'm in my attic in Massachusetts. Justin's in Connecticut, and I don't think I know where Benji is.
In New York City, baby.
There you go. But we're doing this, searching for connection in the midst of a deliberate effort to socially isolate. How do those lessons, and how does what the show talk about impact, and how much more important is it given the settings that we're in, just from you at a personal level? What does that mean, and what should folks be thinking about, and how do we try to do this even more, given, or apply those lessons in even greater extent given the circumstances we find ourselves in?
I think, first of all, there's no right way to do this. Everybody's experience is going to be different. My experience is different from Justin's and Benj's and Jordan's, and it's not any less valid. There's days where I want to give in to the fear and the anxiety, just as there are moments where Evan gives in. We're lucky enough to see it humanized on stage, which is such the gift and beauty of the show. But I mean, I would just say, I mean, there's no rush to be better, because better it's subjective. I mean, it doesn't exist. Better, it's just taking moments day by day, because that's all we physically can do right now. And I mean, that's another mantra of the show. I mean, taking things one step at a time, and slowly accepting, and slowly just, I don't know, loving that much harder.
Yeah, it might seem pat, but one of the mantras of the show that it keeps coming back to is today you're you, and that's enough. And it's a simple statement, but if there's a mantra for our time, it's all the things that we're doing or not doing, the connection or disconnection that we feel, whatever it is. It's well, today we're us. I'm me, you're you, and that's enough. And that's all we can do today. That's all we can be today. We really have no other choice.
Yeah, I think another message in the show is the belief and finding hope in moments of uncertainty and moments of despair. And sometimes you have to create that for yourself, and sometimes it exists. But believing in and having faith in, and I'm not a religious person, but I truly do have faith in the idea that things will get better, and that if you keep moving and you keep walking forward and you keep looking for connections and you keep reaching out and you keep raising your hand when you're in a dark spot, or you tell the people that you love that you're sitting in a well and you need somebody to come and sit there with you and help you out, that's someone will be there for you. And I really do believe that it's important to have hope in these moments, and that's a central message of the show. And that there are times that are very, very dark, and there are times that seem like they are completely hopeless. But at the end of the day, there are people who will love you for you being exactly who you are, and there will be people who will be by your side if you take the risk and are brave enough to raise your hand and say that you need that help, and say that you need that love, and reach out for someone to grab that hand.
Which is often the hardest part, which is often the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I can piggyback off of what Benj was saying as well, not only will things get better, I think that one important thing to do is to celebrate the things that have already gotten better. As an Angelino, I live in one of the most polluted cities in the country, and we have seen Los Angeles and really, quite frankly, the rest of the world take a deep inhale. I have never seen the city cleaner. I have never seen, the walks around my neighborhood that people are taking with their medical masks. I've never seen people happier to just see another human. There's kind of just a general revitalized kind of outlook on the things that we do have, right? I was having a conversation. I had a Zoom conference yesterday, as a matter of fact, with it's a group of fans that won a thing that I did for COVID relief thing. And something that we did talk about was how important it is to recognize the little things that we have been taking for granted, and looking forward to not only having those things again, but genuinely relishing in those things, cherishing those things, loving those things, whether they be, a simple meal in a restaurant with family, or a very free stroll down a beach or anything along those lines. The little things that we can have right now that are within our grasp, but the things that we do need to love on and really take care of and cherish, because there are some things. It's very, very difficult. I'm sure for a lot of people to find the silver lining in anything, especially, most specifically speaking on a pandemic that is global and is unprecedented. It's important to also recognize the things that we do have. And yeah.
I just want to say also it's 7:01 and outside of my window, all of New York is clapping for
so cool. I love that.
Who are on the front lines. And,
so
as you were saying that, Jordan, I mean, literally my neighbors, I'm hearing all of this applause outside of my window because,
let's join them real fast then. Why not?
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there is this sense of, even though we're all in our siloed little worlds and literally in our apartments, we come out together and we, raise our voices and we clap for the people who are getting us through and to remind us that there's hope.
Amen. We can end on that one. Thank you guys so much for what you do, for the courage that you had to pull this show together to do this so directly, your graciousness for coming on tonight, and for being as open and courageous and brave as you have been. The way I am convinced that we tackle these issues on stigma and access is by having people we look up to and people that we seek to emulate, be able to say, hey, it's okay, because me too. And we can wrap on that. Being you it's enough. So thank you all. Really grateful. Stay healthy, stay well, stay safe.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I've learned to slam on the brake before I even turn the key, before I make the mistake, before I lead with the worst of me. Give them no reason to stare, no slipping up if you slip away. So I got nothing to share, no, I got nothing to say. Step out of the sun if you keep getting burned. Step out of the sun because you've learned. On the outside, always looking in. Will I ever be more than I've always been? 'Cause I'm tapping on the glass. I'm waving through a window. I try to speak, but nobody can hear. So I wait around for an answer to appear while I'm watching people pass. I'm waving through a window. Can anybody see? Is anybody waving back at me? We start with stars in our eyes. We start believing that we belong, but every sun doesn't rise, and no one tells you where you went wrong. Step out of the sun if you keep getting burned. Step out of the sun because you've learned. On the outside, always looking in. Will I ever be more than I've always been? 'Cause I'm tapping on the glass, waving through a window. I try to speak, but nobody can hear. So I wait around for an answer to appear while I'm watching people pass. Waving through a window. Can anybody see? Is anybody waving when you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around? Do you ever really crash or even make a sound when you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around? Do you ever really crash or even make a sound when you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around? Do you ever really crash or even make a sound when you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around? Do you ever really crash or even make a sound? Did I even make a sound? Did I even make a sound? It's like I never made a sound. Will I ever make a sound? On the outside, always looking in. Will I ever be more than I've always been? 'Cause I'm tapping on the glass, waving through a window. I try to speak, but nobody can hear, so I wait around for an answer to appear while I'm watching people pass, waving through a window. Can anybody see? Is anybody waving back at me? Is anybody waving? Whoa, whoa.
If there's a lesson for this moment, I'm not sure there could be a more powerful one than today you're you, and that's enough. As we all wrestle with the uncertainty, the anxiety, the fear that a virus and economic collapse brings, to know that you're you and that's enough, I think is an extremely powerful thing to try to keep in mind. For those that might need additional help or resources, we've posted some information in the links and the resources that the cast has made available, the production has made available down below on our site, so that people can explore that and see if they happen to know of people or they themselves that might benefit from some of the assistance and the support that the production has put forward. It's there for you. Please don't hesitate. If you've got questions or concerns or need to talk to somebody, need access to assistance, reach out to those links, reaching out to our office, just reaching out to somebody and check in on others, given the challenges that everybody is going through and the impact that this moment's going to have on so many people. If you've got the opportunity and ability, reach out and check in on everybody else. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep an eye out for one another. Thanks so much.